What is up, everybody? This is the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name's Amy Nixon. My co-host Michael Ween. Today we got a Zoom call for y'all. We're able to get the split screen going, and we're gonna be talking football. We're gonna be uh, making our top 10 QBs list, and as well as there are things going on with some comments Kyrie Irving made. We saw some comments former player Steven Jackson made. So we'll discuss those things as well. Without further ado, we're going to get right into it.
Yep. So we did a top 10. Amy and I guess, worked together to create our top 10 NFL quarterbacks going into the 2020 NFL season. So we're going to count them down from 10 to 1, analyze each one specifically, and then we'll move into our NBA discussion.
Right. And we based this list on numbers, their ability to win in clutch situations, the playoffs, etc., right, and as well as what we project them to be next season.
Correct. And those numbers, we based it off of kind of the last 2 or 3 years. A lot of numbers that we'll put out today are like the past 2 and 3 years all put together. Because we thought that was kind of a little better evaluation than just last year. So we'll see how it goes. And we hope to hear from you guys. I would love for you guys to tweet us at Raw Prospect Podcast. What would be like your top 5 or top 10 quarterbacks? We'd love to hear that from you guys as well. But with that being said, let's get into it. At number 10, we have Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. Emmy, do you want to start us off with Dak?
Dak, mostly the reason why we have him at 10 is he's been able to win at a pretty consistent rate in the years that he's been in the league. You can say what you want about his consistency and his throwing ability, but the fact is he's able to win, and that at the end of the day, that's the point. That's why you play the game. So and his numbers were really good last season. He was first in the league in yards last year. So was he second in the league in yards?
I think he was second behind Jameis Winston.
Right, behind Jameis Winston. My bad. Excuse me. So he was second in the league in yards, and he was really efficient last year. He, in terms of the eye test, he's not on the same level as some of the other quarterbacks, but you have to put respect on his name with the numbers that he puts up and his ability to win games. So that's why he's on this list.
Right. If you've been watching or listening to this podcast long enough, you know I'm a numbers guy or like a stats guy. I love stats. So I have a lot of stats for each of these quarterbacks. I'm not sure I'll go through them all because it would take too long. But I will say, if you look at the statistics the past 3 seasons, he's been in the league 4 years, so we're excluding his rookie season. But the past 3 years, a 65% completion percentage, 74 touchdowns to just 32 picks, about a 95 quarterback rating, all really good top 10 consideration numbers. But if you really dive into his statistical rankings since he was drafted back in 2016, so 4 years, passing yards, he ranks 6th in that time span. Touchdowns, he ranks 9th. And in terms of wins, he has 40 of those. That's tied second with Russell Wilson since 2016. Only trailing, of course, the GOAT, Tom Brady, in that time span. So pretty darn good in terms of the stats. He grades out as a top 10 quarterback. Where you put him is kind of the argument here. But the numbers, he grades out as a top 10 quarterback. The intangibles, definitely as a top 10 quarterback. And then the wins, he's tied second with Russell Wilson. And they only trail Tom Brady. That's that speaks for itself, in my opinion. So,
Right. He still needs to work on his accuracy, though. I'd say that's his biggest area where he would need to improve. And hopefully, once he can do that, I feel like if the Cowboys can utilize his running ability a little bit more, I feel like he'll be up there in the top 10 for many years to come. So he's got a bright future ahead of him.
I feel that way as well. So with that,
So,
done with Dak,
moving on.
we can move pretty quickly here, or pretty efficiently, to number 9, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. I'll start this one off. So over the past 3 seasons, Cousins, 25-21 win-loss record. So he's just above 500, but it's really hard to win in this league. That's what people don't understand. So that's still pretty good. Completing about 68% of his passes. He's been really accurate, or more accurate than you think, with 83 touchdowns and just 29 picks. With about, if you round it up, a 100 quarterback rating. Not a ton of quarterbacks have a quarterback rating over 100 in that long of a time span. It's really hard to do. And last year, I mean, just alone, we all have documented in past podcasts his problems playing in primetime games, playing on the big Sunday night game, or in Thursday night games, or in Monday night games, where he's yet to win a Monday night game in like 8 or 9 tries. We all know his drawbacks as a player in big games. But if you just look at the numbers, last year he ranked in the league's top 10 in terms of touchdowns, passer rating, yards per attempt, touchdown rate, interception rate, and completion percentage. So basically in every statistical category possible, Kirk Cousins is a top 10 NFL quarterback. And regardless of what you think, of his abilities to perform when the lights are the brightest, he may have overcome, he may have gotten the monkey off his back when he went into New Orleans in this last year's playoffs and outdueled Drew Brees in a big overtime victory. So, I mean, as far as numbers go, he's top 10. You can say what you want about his primetime abilities, but not a whole lot of quarterbacks have been better statistically in the past 3 or 4 years.
Right. And you look at the big-time throw he made to Adam Thielen in the clutch of that Saints playoff game. That's a throw that not a lot of QBs in the NFL can make. That was a big-time throw. Right. So, I mean, if you combine that he has at least a clutch moment now, and he at least has that on his resume now. You add that to all the numbers he's been putting up and all the winning he's done, you have to put him in. You have to at least have him on the list. So,
right. Giving respect where respect is due. So, with that, we'll move pretty efficiently. Number 8, the GOAT, Tom Brady. Do you want to start us off with this one?
Right. Tom Brady, it was well documented that people thought that he may have been starting the decline this year, but here he is on this list. Whether you think he was starting a decline or not, his numbers were still top tier, and he was still very good. His team still won games, and I think most of his struggles were because of his receiving core. I feel like he didn't have any go-to guys outside of Julian Edelman for the majority of that season. But if you just want to look at the numbers, he's a winner, and he's just solid in every statistical category except for maybe completion percentage last year. But that was most of the problem he had with completion percentage was not because of accuracy. It was actually because of throwaways, him not taking sacks and not throwing picks. So it's actually him just being a savvy veteran.
Right. Yeah, I could throw out all, the stats that I've gathered for the past 3 years, but let's just look at last year because that's really the year that people say, oh, he's really, on the decline now. His numbers weren't, what we think Tom Brady's numbers should be. But I just want to put this out there for all you guys who think that his numbers weren't, I guess, um, good enough. If you look at his numbers and compare his numbers last season, and I know this guy missed 2 games with a dislocated kneecap, but we consider Patrick Mahomes the best quarterback, or I'm pretty sure most people do. If you compare his numbers just last season, okay, Brady had 4,057 passing yards, his lowest total since 2016. That was more than Mahomes had last year, even though I acknowledge he did miss 2 games. 24 touchdowns. Mahomes had 26, so not too far of a disparity there. And he only threw 8 interceptions. Mahomes threw 5. Now, again, Mahomes did miss 2 games. I acknowledge that. But if you look at the numbers, he's really not that far off from the elite, from what we consider to be the elite of the elite. His numbers are right up there with some very, very good quarterbacks. And nobody, of course, has really matched him in terms of winning. So when you put his success in the playoffs, combined with the fact that his numbers, even on a decline, rival those of quarterbacks on top of our list, he's got to be somewhere in the top 10. And don't forget, he's playing in Tampa Bay now, and they have, let's see, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, OJ Howard, all those guys. He's got Gronk back now. Whatever you think of Gronk is for a different day, but he's got a lot more weapons now, and he's playing now for an offensive coach in Bruce Arians. Whereas Belichick's more of kind of a defensive mind. That's what people think of when they think of Bill Belichick. It's more of a defense. He has a defensive background, whereas Arians has an offensive background. So maybe that will help him.
Right, exactly. So with that into account, we project Tom Brady to be better next year with the receivers he's going to have. So I think 8 is for him. So moving along, at 7, we have Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz. Last year, the Eagles just made the playoffs at 9-7. They were slaughtered with injuries the entirety of the year. His receiving core was just decimated. By the end of the year, he had guys that were coming off the practice squad and he was throwing to. But at the end of the day, he was still able to lead his team to the playoffs. And I think that was really, really impressive. So obviously Wentz, he hasn't been the same since he tore his ACL. He hasn't been quite on that level yet. But I think considering everything that he's done with Henry's numbers, his numbers are still really good. He just hasn't been able to win as much as he did before that injury. So I think he still should be at 7, and I think he's going to have another breakout year next year. I think he's ready to break out again.
You mentioned it. I mean, his lack of receiver talent in his first 4 years as quarterback he's played with 19 total receivers, 9 of which are no longer even on a league roster. So over half of just under half of the receivers he's played with are not even in the league anymore. And 7 of those guys were undrafted free agents. So we're talking about he's played with, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say what Colin Cowherd says. He's playing with deck chairs and lawn furniture. I wouldn't go that far. But, he's had, very little wide receiver talent in the first 4 years of his career. And you look at the three guys who he's played with who have had 1,000-yard seasons. Golden Tate, he only played with him for 4 games. Torrey Smith, when he joined the Eagles, he was 5 years removed from his 1,000-yard season that he had. And Alshon Jeffrey, who's for a large part of last year and seasons past has been hurt. So the guys he does get who are capable of putting up those numbers at the receiver position, they've either been hurt or are no longer in the league or just aren't capable. So the fact that he puts up these numbers, 81 touchdowns, 21 picks with basically a 99 quarterback rating over the past 3 seasons with this level of talent at receiver is pretty remarkable, given his injury and all that. So, I think he's in the right place. I think we need to see more in that, because durability is the best stability, right? The ability to stay healthy. So I guess he is injury prone and he can't really do anything about that. But if he can end up staying healthy, that would probably help his case and elevating him into maybe even the top 5 because he passes the eye test. When he's healthy,
Right.
He definitely passes the eye test in terms of talent. That's why he was picked 2 overall in 2016. But,
right. And talent-wise, I think a lot of scouts around the league would agree with me on this. Talent-wise, I feel like he is probably the only quarterback that's only young quarterback that's comparable to Patrick Mahomes in terms of arm strength and just physical.
Right.
Hello?
Hello? I'm here. So I guess, are you done with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on to Aaron Rodgers at number 6.
Right.
You know, yes, he has dropped off a little bit in terms of his numbers. Over the past 3 seasons, 23 and 15 win loss, only about 62% completion percentage, 67 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And his numbers last year weren't what you would think Aaron Rodgers' numbers to be. But I think he still is the best, and this ability is very important in today's league, at not turning the ball over. I think I saw a stat on Twitter when I was doing my prep for this podcast, and in his past 1,677 pass attempts, so that encompasses the past 2 seasons, he's only thrown 6 picks. And I think that equates out to being like 1 pick for every 70-some passes. So he rarely turns the ball over. That beats the next best by a large margin. So, he's still putting up, and his arm talent is still there. He still passes the eye test. I did find another, not that this really matters, but I did find another just mind-blowing statistic. Okay, think about Hall of Fame quarterbacks in today's NFL. Tom Brady, of course, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, guys like that. Okay, career touchdown passes to first-round picks. Okay, Brady has 105. Drew Brees has 104. Roethlisberger has 69. Even Phillip Rivers, who may or may not make the Hall of Fame, has 35. Aaron Rodgers has thrown 1 touchdown pass in his career to a first-round pick. Now, before you rebuttal, That's not to say he hasn't had talent. He's had some very good receivers. Greg Jennings, Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, guys like that. He's had some good weapons. But what I'm highlighting is, and this has been highlighted, on shows, on national radio shows, and on TV everywhere when you talk about Aaron Rodgers, is what I'm highlighting. Green Bay's, they have, I guess, they haven't been aggressive in trying to surround Aaron Rodgers with top tier talent at either the receiver or running back positions. And it's highlighted by that stat. And the fact that he can do that with guys who are good, but not at that elite first round pick level is amazing to me. So
Right. That is crazy. That really is a testament to. I think you have to give a little bit of credit to the Packers front office that they were able to find the diamonds in the rough, but it also comes with the price of a guy like Randall Cobb. His ceiling is lower than what you would get out of a first-round wide receiver. So I think you make a really interesting point there. He hasn't had a guy who you can just throw it up and that your receiver, you can count on your receiver to just go get it. Like he hasn't really had that guy that could just commands double teams. Like I think I said Randall Cobb earlier. I meant Devontae Adams. Sorry about that.
Right. I don't think I meant to, but I don't think I said Devontae Adams. But, those are his four, I guess, most notable weapons.
Right.
We have watched him play with Jennings, Cobb, Nelson, and now Adams. Those are his guys. So.
Right.
But he still deserves, at 6, what are you going to do? With all the great young quarterbacks we have now, that's not a knock. 6 is still in that it's approaching that. He's still up there with the elite. He's just not in that category. He's right outside of it, in my opinion now. So, but that's what comes with age. So with that, number 5, we put Drew Brees of the New Orleans Saints. Do you want me to start?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
You got another veteran quarterback. Drew Brees over the last 3 seasons has had a 74% completion percentage, which is the highest in NFL history for one season, but he's maintained that for 3 seasons on end. It's unbelievable. He's just the master of precision, and we may never see a quite accurate and precise as Drew Brees ever again at that height. He's just one of a kind player. But I will say this though, his arm strength is diminishing with his old age just a little bit, and you're seeing teams start to game plan for the shorter throw. So it'll be interesting to see what he brings to the table next year in terms of being able to get the ball a little bit more downfield. I don't know if he'll be able to get it downfield a little bit more.
Right. You hit it right on the head. In terms of accuracy, you're right. I don't think we will see a quarterback ever again, or maybe at least in our lifetimes, as accurate as Drew Brees. It's ridiculous. Last year, it was his age 40 season. Most quarterbacks at their age 40 season, they're on the decline. He completed 74% of his passes at age 40. Most quarterbacks can't do that. And he had a career best 116.3 passer rating. Most quarterbacks aren't setting their career high for passer rating at age 40. In addition to that, I'm just going to hit on some of the knocks that in my lifetime I hear, people, talk when people talk about Drew Brees. Oh, well, Michael, he's he's a dome quarterback. He plays in a dome, and that elevates his statistics or whatever. I hear that all the time. Well, if you want to look at his statistical ranks since 2006, playing outdoors in outdoor stadiums, passing yards per game, 286.4. That ranks first in that time span. Completion percentage in outdoor stadiums since 2006, 67%. That also ranks first in that time span. And then passer rating, a respectable 96. That ranks fourth in that time span. And then you wanna talk about his performance in cold weather because he plays in a dome. So in outdoor stadiums, below when the temperature is 45 degrees or below, and he's playing in a game in those temperatures in the outdoors, not in the dome. Passing yards per game since 2006 ranks first in the NFL. Completion percentage in those games, first in the NFL. Passer rating, second, only behind Tom Brady. So in terms of cold weather games, I don't know what you're smirking at. He's just, we're talking about Tom Brady. This guy has played in cold weather for most of his career. We're talking about Hall of Famers like Ben Roethlisberger and Aaron Rodgers, guys who play in cold weather cities. Drew Brees, sorry, your face is just cracking me up here. But, you can't knock Drew Brees, regardless of where he plays. His numbers don't dip. So, you got to tell me what you're laughing at.
It's just what you said earlier. So you said he playing on under 45 degrees and not in the dome, outside. Well, of course it's outside. I wouldn't want to play in 45 degrees inside.
You get the point.
Yeah. I was trying to. I forgot that you could see me for a second was the problem. Yeah. So.
It's all right. A little bit of personality. It's all right. But I kind of repeated myself and said some things that may have been, not so much that I didn't need to say. But you get the point.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. But anyway, have you said everything? We good on Drew Brees?
I think we're good on Drew Brees.
All right, cool. Moving on. Our number 4 quarterback is Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans. You're looking at a guy who he may not be the most gifted in terms of arm talent or accuracy, but when you need him to make a play, he will always come through, and that's what really makes him special. He has that it quality. He has that clutch factor. You saw it in that playoff game against the Bills when he made that clutch play when he broke like 3 tackles and still delivered the ball downfield. And then the numbers speak for themselves. 68% completion percentage, 9,000 yards, 71 touchdowns, 29 interceptions in the last 3 seasons. He's just been nothing short of incredible, considering that you have a guy like Will Fuller who's in and out of the lineup, and you got a subpar offensive line, to say the least. So,
right,
Deshaun Watson, he's the real deal.
You hit it right on the head. This guy has been, aside from a couple other quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson, since his college days, has basically been the definition of clutch. You look at what he did in those national championship games against Alabama, the one in particular, where he led that game-winning drive and threw the touchdown pass to Hunter Renfrow to beat Bama in whatever year that was. I think it was 2017, something like that. And then to come back from a 16-point deficit when, they had no momentum, to get the Texans jump-started in that playoff game when they had no momentum going up against one of the better defenses in the NFL. and the Buffalo Bills, unbelievable. I believe he's tied. I don't know the exact number, but I believe in the past 2 years he's tied for first for game-winning drive or comeback victories in the fourth quarter. He's tied for first with I forget who it is, but you get the point. I mean, this guy, nothing short of clutch, college or pro. And the numbers, I mean, they speak for themselves. And I think, you know, if the Texans could figure out a way to get him some sort of offensive line, because this guy runs for his life most games when facing like the top of um, the league's best pass rushes. If they could figure out a way to either, I don't know, draft or sign some sort of respectable offensive line, he's only going to get better. So, I mean, Deshaun
Right.
Watson, man.
Right. And a couple of years ago, I made a comment saying if the Texans don't get an offensive line, they're going to stunt the growth of Deshaun Watson. And here we are 2 years later. They still have a bad offensive line, and he still just keeps on getting better. And that just speaks to the resiliency of a guy like him. He's just a really good leader, and he's just a guy you want on your team.
All right. So, I mean, I guess that's all I have to say. We'll move on.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, the MVP of last season of the Baltimore Ravens, is number 3. In terms of last year, we all know what he did if you watch football. 66% completion percentage, over 3,000 yards passing, 36 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. That's a 6-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That's damn good. With a 113 quarterback rating, and not to mention the rushing yards. He broke Michael Vick's record for rushing yards in a season by a quarterback with over 1,200 yards and 7 more touchdowns. So if you look at it in totality, Lamar Jackson scored more touchdowns by himself than 17 other teams scored in the NFL last season alone. He scored 43 touchdowns. That's more than 17 other NFL teams scored respectively last season. So pretty darn impressive if you ask me. And not to mention, he could have had more. His wide receivers dropped 4 possible touchdown passes last year. That was the most in the NFL. So he could have had 4 more on top of that. So, I mean, and he's only going to get better. I mean, he works hard in the offseason. We all see it on social media. He's only going to get better. And I think, everyone wants to knock him for the 2 bad playoff game. Not bad, but, he hasn't been great. He hasn't been good in the playoffs. Let's just get that out of the way. But he is a very young quarterback, and you have to give some quarterbacks time to – sometimes it takes a little bit for them to get a level of comfortability and get used to that playoff environment. So you just got to give him time. But everything else, I mean, he was just unbelievable.
All right. And he considering his style of play, the fact that he hasn't been injured yet, the fact that he's able to avoid all these big hits, it just speaks to just how athletic this guy is. He's just so agile and quick. It's unbelievable. He just makes the best athletes in the world look foolish on a week-to-week basis. If you want to talk about how sustainable his style of play is, that's up for debate. We haven't seen a quarterback who rushes as much as he does last in the NFL, because it just bears down on your body. But I feel like Lamar Jackson may be an exception, because I feel like as the years go by, I feel like Baltimore will shift him more and more and more towards the pocket and make sure that he has that longevity. Because I feel like Baltimore is smart enough to know that he he won't be able to continue playing this way. And I think he's good enough to develop as a passer and be a passer that can run instead of a runner that can pass in the future.
That's a very good point. Yeah, Baltimore, they're one of the top 10, I would say, organizations in the league in terms of ownership, general manager, and coach, with Harbaugh, Ozzie Newsome, and the guys. Their front office and their coaching staff is one of the best, if you ask me, and that's coming from a rival Steelers fan. So, I mean, I think they'll get him to where – I mean, it was only his second full year, not even full year. He's only had like 1.5 years starting. So
Right.
he really hasn't played that much. So you just got to give him time. But I think, yeah, you mentioned it. I think that ownership, that coaching staff will get him the necessary tools, give him the necessary tools and necessary coaching to say, okay, we know you're very athletic, but all it takes, and we saw this with Alex Smith, is one hit, and you're done. So you got to be very careful. But I think they will. I think Baltimore's smart enough to know. Okay, we gotta coach him up on this. But we'll see what happens.
Right. So with that being said, moving along. Up to number 2 on the list, Russell Wilson from the Seattle Seahawks. Here, I mean, if Patrick Mahomes wasn't like insane, then he'd clearly be the number 1 QB in most NFL eras, you know. So Russell Wilson. We've talked about him so much before on this podcast. This is a pro Russell Wilson podcast, I'd say. He was MVP candidate for the entire season last year. He's just fantastic the whole year, carried that team. And he's really the only quarterback that hasn't been injured in his entire career for
never missed a start. Never missed a start. 8 years, never missed a start. It's unbelievable.
It's just so impressive to me. I don't even there's just nothing more you could say other than he's just the model quarterback of this league. He's just a great leader.
You mentioned it. You know, I think we agree. And we'll just start with the stats. I mean, over the past 3 seasons, he's thrown 100 touchdowns to just 23 interceptions. Now, I know Mahomes, there was a ton of touchdowns, and I know he's only played 2 full years as a starter. But if you take the last 3 seasons, Russell Wilson has thrown 15 more touchdowns than any other quarterback in the league. Second would be Tom Brady at 85. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2, you brought up, and I totally agree, I think most people who know their football would agree that Russell Wilson should be in the MVP conversation on a year-to-year basis. That's just how good he is, right?
Right.
But make sure you hear me correctly. In his 8 seasons, he has zero MVP votes. 0 MVP votes. Not just awards. We're not talking awards, right? We're talking votes. 0. I mean, the disrespect is unbelievable. I don't know if people just don't watch him or realize how good he is. But, I mean, if you look at the numbers, you don't have to, think very hard or be very smart to realize that since Russell Wilson was drafted in 2012, Seattle's second in winning percentage, 67.6%. That's second in the league, only behind the Patriots, of course. Seasons with 10 or more wins, he has 7 of those. That's also second, only trailing, of course, the great Tom Brady. And in playoff victories, he has 9 in that span. That's second in the NFL. Only behind, of course, the great Tom Brady. So when you're talking about this time span since he's been drafted, he ranks as the second best quarterback, right where we have him, only behind the greatest of all time, Tom Brady.
Right.
I mean, the disrespect is unbelievable. And one more thing, most passing touchdowns by a quarterback in their first 8 seasons. Peyton Manning is number 1. He had 244 touchdown passes in his first 8 years. Dan Marino, another Hall of Famer, is number 2, 241 touchdown passes in his first 8 years. Russell Wilson comes in at number 3 with 227 touchdown passes in his first 8 seasons. And then you have Brett Favre, number 4, 213 touchdown passes in his first 8 years. All 3 of those other quarterbacks, Manning, Marino, and Favre, had an MVP in their first 8 seasons, an MVP award in their hands. Wilson, no votes. Unbelievable.
Right. And let me just say this as well. I think it's interesting that I think he's really the only elite quarterback of his era. Think about it. You have out of the elite quarterbacks in the league today, you have the veterans, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, those guys. And then you have the young guys, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, and guys of that nature. And he's the only one that's like in that 30 years old range. I think that's really interesting that there is a gap in the good quarterbacks drafted in that 2008 to 2014 range. There wasn't a lot of quarterbacks drafted. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who votes. Maybe you know. I don't know who votes for the NFL MVP. But, I mean, someone's got to vote for this guy. At least vote for him. Even if you don't think he should win the award. And granted, all the guys who have won have deserved to win. I mean, Jackson, what he did was unbelievable. We all know what Mahomes was able to do, and the guys before that as well. But at least give this guy a vote. 1. I mean, it's unreal. Unreal.
Right.
So with that, you got something to say?
No, we're
okay.
You got it.
Yeah, I think you guys know who's number 1. I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes, the MVP of the regular season 2 years ago, or the season before last, and the MVP of the Super Bowl. We all know. I mean, do we really have to say much? I mean, he's the 23-7 in his first 30 starts, 66% completion percentage, over 9,000 yards, 76 touchdowns to just 17 picks, and a 110 quarterback rating. I mean, what else do you have to say? And then on top of all that, last year when trailing by double digits, at some point in the game, he was 5-0. And we all watched the playoffs, right? 3 straight double-digit comebacks. We all remember that, the big Texans comeback. That was the most, I guess, famous or notable of them all when he came back from 24-0 and scored some 50 straight points or whatever it was. And then he came back against the Titans after trailing 10-0. And then trailing in the fourth quarter of that 49ers Super Bowl, he was trailing by 10 with 8 minutes to go. And all he did from there on out was lead 3 straight touchdown drives to win the Chiefs the Super Bowl. And granted, up to that point in the game, he played probably statistically one of his worst games in his career. I mean, 2 picks. It wasn't the greatest performance. But if you look at crunch time in those last 8 minutes, he was nothing short of exceptional. I think his quarterback rating in that last 8 minutes was like 135 or something. So, I mean, say what you want about his performance in that game. When he needed to be great, he was great.
Right. Really, it's stupid how good he is.
Yeah, it is.
Honestly, just retarded.
It
It's
is retarded.
who gave this man his talent? Like, I really want to know. Like,
I don't know.
this dude can throw a football out of a stadium.
Yeah.
Like, that's so, like, what?
Yeah.
It doesn't even make any sense.
I mean, you don't even have to watch him for that long to know how good he is. I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't know. We don't really. I'm sure all of you guys who listen to this podcast know Patrick Mahomes, and you know how
Right.
good he is. So we don't need to do any further explaining. So I guess with that, if we're done, that's our top 10 quarterbacks list. That was something we haven't done in a while, so we just decided to do it. And I'm sure we'll come back to it again in the future if we're still doing this sometime.
If sports come back.
If sports do come back. But that is a great transition because now we transition into our NBA discussion. And, if you follow the news, Kyrie Irving has been he did a Zoom, I believe he did like a Zoom call. He got like 80 players together to voice his opinions on why they shouldn't resume or why he thinks the NBA shouldn't resume this season. So we'll just have a little discussion here on kind of what you think about his remarks, I guess whether you agree or disagree, and then just basically what you think.
Right. Here's the thing. I don't think Kyrie Irving has deserved the hate that he's received over these past few days. He was really just doing his job. We have to remember, he is the vice VP of the NBA Players Association. So really, when he got this call together, he was really just making sure his players were heard and making sure all of the concerns were out there when he was just making that call. As for his stance on everything, I really want basketball to come back, but I know that that may come from a selfish place because of everything that's going on. Because really, he's right. He has a point. But on the other hand, also LeBron has a point. He's saying that he will still be able to carry on the change that's needed while playing basketball. But here's the thing, though. Talk is cheap. I just need him to be I just need to put the money where his mouth is. I need him to really take action. If he does carry on this move and he does get players to join him and not play, I need them to really be aggressive about getting the change that we need,
Right.
So that's all I wanted to say. I agree with Kyrie to an extent. That's basically the gist of it. I honestly agree with both sides because part of me wants the NBA to come back. Of course, I'm such a huge NBA fan, but also what's happening in the world right now is bigger than basketball, and there's just so much wrong with the system as of right now. If you just look at the numbers, black men are 3 times more likely to get incarcerated, and that's really just the police brutality and just the prison system in general. So,
right.
Yeah.
All of what you said is it's very true. Look, just in terms of Kyrie and what he's saying, I think his heart is in a good place. I get the gist of what he's trying to bring attention to, right? And you said it best. He's just doing his job, trying to bring awareness to the issues at stake right now. And there are bigger issues than basketball. I mean, I don't think anyone would argue. And if they did, they'd just be ignorant or, just out of their minds that the issues we're facing right now in terms of a nation, in terms of as a nation and globally are way bigger than a sport, basketball, baseball, football will ever be, right? But to a certain extent, as you said, we as huge sports fans and hosts of this podcast, and along with many other radio hosts and television analysts, guys at ESPN, Fox, CBS, everybody. I mean, everybody wants sports to come back. It's just not us. And I think sports, whether you like it or not, it does help to bring people together. So I think, as you mentioned, there are two sides. But yes, I do think his heart is in a good place. And I don't think people should be ratting on him for having this stance. But at the same time, I do think Kyrie needs to realize what's at stake here, not just this year, but for future years. If you don't play this season, you're likely going to have a lockout for the start of next season because they're going to try to renegotiate the CBA. I mean, that's just how it's going to work. And you're going to lose out on however much money you're slated to make next season. And if you don't play this year, the salary cap is likely going to dip a ton. So you have that at stake as well. So I know the social implications are huge, but at the same time, you have to realize that if you don't play, if the NBA, and I think they're going to, because LeBron is the powerful person here, and he's going to play basketball, so I think everyone will follow suit. But I think you do have to realize, and I'm sure he realizes this, maybe he just hasn't said it, that if you don't play this season, it could have bigger effects on the financial side, not just this year, but in future years to come, when this issue is maybe not at the forefront anymore. And
Right.
lastly, I just want to say, you can use your platform as one of the stars in this league that has grown in popularity every single year for a long time now. You can use that to bring awareness, as he was saying, to these issues that need change and need change as soon as we can get it. But at the same time, bringing awareness, you can bring all the awareness you want, but you're also going to need action. You need action. That's what's really going to make the change. So I think, I understand where he's coming from. His heart's in a good place, but I think he probably does and if he doesn't, needs to realize the financial implications are huge. You have a family to feed, I'm pretty sure. You're going to lose a ton of money if you don't end up playing, even though you probably already do have a ton of money. And I know.
I think I'm quoting him here. He said he's willing to risk it all.
Okay.
For
nope.
I don't know if that's implying him retiring, but I respect that. I really do.
I didn't know he said that, but if that's what he said, man, all power to you, Kyrie. I mean,
right. I tip my hat to him.
You gotta tip your hat to him if that's the extent that he wants to go to solve these issues. I mean, and I think some players agree with him, but at the same time, you can realize that if you don't play this year, you're going to risk money down the line if you do, in fact, want to still play basketball. And there's a reason you have this platform. So you can use it to leverage changes that need to be made. You can use your voice. Your voice is powerful. It may not be as powerful as some other guys in the league, but it still holds value. So his heart's in a good place. I think as long as he realizes that, I respect it. Do what you want to do, Kyrie. I tip my hat to you.
Right. With that being said, guys, I think that's gonna do it. You have anything you want to add?
I don't know how much time. Do you have the time?
55 minutes.
Okay, I
Just
don't know.
under 56.
We can save this for another podcast if you want. I just wanted to get your opinion on what you think. A lot of people are worried about the NBA's quality, like what the quality of play will be like when the season does in fact resume. If you don't want to do that, we can save it for another podcast. But I just wanted to get
No, I think we can fit it in. I think it will be at first. It definitely will suffer just a little bit because just based on rust alone, it's going to be that way. But also, I think it's going to be really hard for the players to lock in because really the players feed off of the energy the fans make in the playoff environment, and obviously with everything going on in the world, I feel like it's going to be really hard for them to focus on the game and focus on basketball, and play the best of their abilities.
I am skeptical. I'm not sure. You can't expect perfect. I mean, none of this is perfect. The situation's not perfect. Nothing's been perfect. You can't expect that. But I do think that, I mean, I know it's not the same, but if you look at the statistics over the past 5 seasons, in an ESPN article, um, you look at um, a season's first 8 games, right? Which is going to be the period equivalent to what they're going to be playing, right? Before they go into the playoffs. They're going to be playing 8 exhibition, regular season, preseason games, whatever you want to call it. If you look at the first 8 games for teams offensively in the past, if you just want to talk on-court performance, the first 8 games, they struggle a little bit, but after those first 8 games, over the past 4 or 5 seasons, points per game goes up, field goal percentage goes up, both 2-point and 3-point, free throw percentage goes up, and turnover percentage goes down. And I know that, you have to acknowledge those are normal seasons, right? There weren't any lockouts. They had a full training camp. They had all that, the award was normal and they had their facilities and all that stuff. But I mean, I think although it won't be perfect, I think based on history, and we know how much history matters, it matters to a certain extent. It's not, it doesn't tell the whole story, but
Right.
I think we can count on a slight improvement at the very least. And I think those 8 games will get them primed enough to have a respectable playoffs. But to be honest with you, we just want to watch something. I mean, come on. We just want to watch basketball. I mean, at this point, does anyone really care what it looks like? I mean, maybe if it's, there's certain expectations because you're a professional basketball player, but people just want to watch sports again.
Right. Just any kind of live sports, I will be 100% down for it. And I admit to being really bored during this quarantine. I've actually been watching like 2K Sims and just anything.
It's hard. It's very hard. We need sports back soon. But with that, I think that's going to do it for episode 44. So this Zoom recording, we'll get it uploaded to YouTube as soon as possible. Imy will do the sharing to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can find the audio there. We'll have the Zoom recording on YouTube. I'm going to actually be going out of town on Friday, and I'll be gone for a week. So I'm not sure I'll be able to do a podcast, but if not, I'm sure Imy will be doing something maybe.
Right.
He can speak to that if he wants, but
Right. I was thinking I would start a mini podcast series where I would have just some 2K playing in the background, and I would just talk about certain NBA teams in the 22 teams,
right.
and I would just go in depth and just
Give you your thoughts on.
yes, just a small discussion, and it would just be like a mini podcast. And I want to make it to where our podcasts are just convenient enough to where you're able to listen to it and not feel like you wasted an hour of your life. But I mean,
Right.
obviously we're going to continue to do our normal podcasts, but those will be something for our casual listeners to listen to just for 10-15 minutes. So I'm excited for that. But
Yeah,
with
I
that,
look forward to that as well. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully you guys will listen to those. I certainly will. But if not, if I don't see you next week, I will see you the following week for another episode.
right.
I'm sure we'll have
And
more to talk about.
that's going to do it, y'all. This has been the Raw Prospect Podcast, and until next time, peace out.